Are you ready? The Cornelia Stephanie Show. Wake up to love, your call to action. Join Cornelia as she empowers others to live heaven on earth. Cornelia teaches listeners how to be the authority over yourself, embracing your inner guru. Feel yourself uplifted into limitless expansion, integrating ease and grace in a changing world. This show will cover topics such as unconditional love, your physical body, how to be in extraordinary relationships, create financial and emotional wealth, embracing entrepreneurship in the new earth. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cornelia Stephanie Show. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you today. We have a great show for you. Suzanne Gerber is here. She's a seasoned astrological counselor, and we're here to talk about the astrology of 2024 and beyond. She called it the Great Awakening or the end of the world as we know it. Right, Suzanne? Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Cornelia. It's such a pleasure to be here with you again. It's always so nice to chat.
Yes, it is. I want to share with the audience what you wrote about Pluto being back in Aquarius. Jupiter and Uranus are about to form a rare conjunction. The karmic lunar nodes are dancing with the wounded healer Chiron. And the next year, 3 more major astrological planets will change signs, suggesting a radical sea change. You say that it's not hard to correlate these cosmic influences with the geopolitical climate and the actual climate. Clearly, we're barreling towards some kind of crossroads, and our actions will have consequences for generations to come. So we're here to learn what's coming down the planetary pike, so to speak, and you can make the most of your opportunities.
Do you want me to jump right in, or did you have a ground-laying question for us?
Well, I just feel like this is such an important time, with us rebuilding our world, our new earth. And I feel like it's happening with each and every one of us being at the driver's seat, being at the helm. And so, what you were talking about, the opportunities that are there for us to take responsibility. And Pluto in Aquarius is going to help us do that, because wherever we felt powerless, Pluto is now helping us to reclaim our power and step into our truth.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think it's happening on multiple levels. I wonder if I should go back just a little and put this in a framework for people, because things don't happen out of nowhere, right? It's not like, oh, Pluto just exploded into Aquarius out of nowhere. Pluto has been moving through the previous sign for 16 years. The previous sign is Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign of, among other things, structure, old world order, patriarchy, corporations, things like that, very traditional. And there's a kind of, it doesn't have to be male dominated, because this isn't about genders. This isn't about male people and female people. These are yin and yang energies in the world. And so Pluto has spent 16 years in that sign, kind of bringing its radical, transformative potential. Everything's a potential, right? Just because a planet changes signs, it's not like, oh, that's a guarantee that something will happen. And while Pluto was doing that, Saturn, which was together with Pluto during COVID, along with Jupiter, which is part of what a lot of people look at as being associated with that global pandemic. Astrologers were saying for years, something crazy is coming down the pike. Nobody predicts this, right? But once it happens, you deal with it and you start to make sense of things. So Pluto is the slowest moving planet in our regular solar system. So he's going to take that long. Meanwhile, the other planets are moving along, moving along. Saturn moved into the next sign of Aquarius, where Pluto now is, where he was squaring the planet Uranus. Saturn and Uranus together are the ancient and the modern rulers of Aquarius. They were pointing out, they were revealing the structural flaws in this very structure. So Saturn is hanging on for dear life, right? Trying to keep the systems. And when we're talking about systems, it's like, what aren't we talking about? We're talking about our government. We're talking about policing. We're talking about healthcare. We're talking about education. We're talking, obviously, the travel industry, but everything that got uprooted during that churn that was COVID. And so the Aquarian part of it was very modern and very progressive in saying, look, the old system isn't working. We can't feed people. Our health systems around the world can't support this level of crisis. Infrastructures in cities and across the countries, they can't sustain things the way they've been. You can't just keep putting Band-Aids and weld little patches on. We need to rebuild. So for almost 2 full years, those two planets clashed. And I think we saw that happening. It's hard not to have seen it still happening. Clashes of ideologies, clashes of systems. And then, of course, on the very personal level, within ourselves, a lot of people found themselves mirroring this bigger shift that was changing. Do they want to go back to work? Do they want to keep working in that field? Maybe they love working from home. Maybe they like not working for a while. Maybe they can finally develop that startup, that creative idea, that artistic venture, something different. And they've been struggling within themselves to find a new way to express it. This is the backstory. This is where the Pluto and Aquarius movie opens, with that action having happened. So it's very radical. It's very exciting. And frankly, a little terrifying, because the day that Pluto went into Aquarius this year, just the other day, January 20th of 2024, and it did go in for a couple months in 2023. I call that the sneak preview. That was like, okay, guys, catch a glimpse, start to get used to it, prepare as best, not only best you can, but in the best way for you. This isn't a doom and gloom scenario. But we had a few months, and the day that Pluto entered Aquarius, just for that first time in March of 2023, last year, was the day that ChatGPT was released in a new format that was more accessible to more people with voice commands, that it was a different user experience than the beta versions they had rolled out. And even more tellingly, not only was it working with text, it was working with images, which is fun and exciting and really scary for identity purposes, right? We know about all the theft that's going on, and it's starting to very quickly, because everything today with technology happens like at 100 times the acceleration rate that it used to. That's the very nature of technological advancement. And so a lot of people just are kind of scratching their heads. The same day that Pluto enters Aquarius, let's call it a stable or the most advanced user accessible version of AI is released, unleashed on the world, same day. So what does this say? Well, best possible scenarios, right? And we'll get into that in a couple minutes, but ways to advance medicine and diagnosis and climate resources and farming, and just things that we're all really excited about, but also identity theft, fake news, the ability to proliferate things and confuse things in ways that nobody will ever even know how to figure out what's true. So this is the crossroads that we stand at. And I want to say more about Pluto and Aquarius, but I want to do it in small bites, because I know not everybody listening is an astrologer and is conversant with some of these terms.
Yeah, you know, yes to everything you said. I can certainly feel that in my own personal life, and I can see it also playing out in the world at large.
Yeah. So, Cornelia, what I thought would be important before we kind of go through what these major transits are, and they're very major, make no mistake, these are big deals. And also the fact that so many are happening in a very short period of time is in itself significant, kind of potentiating some of these opportunities that we see. But what I want to say, and this is really, really important for me, is that nothing is written in stone or even written in the stars. These are, I think it's helpful to think of this as prevailing winds, maybe, of cosmic energy that influence us. We're not going to get into, why and how. It's something that you kind of accept or you don't, right? But we see that when certain planets make certain moves and make certain angles to other planets, it is associated or correlated with kinds of events, kinds of opportunities, both in the world at large and in our personal lives. So, and it's been working like this for thousands of years across cultures. So I think it's worth taking it at the very least as a working premise that there really is meaning here. But it doesn't mean that X will lead to Y outcome. Why? Because we're all unique, right? We're all individuals. We all have different life circumstances, different beliefs, different levels of consciousness evolution, and we're all going to receive these energies and these influences and respond differently. And you could say, well, aren't these changes helping us evolve collectively? And I would say, oh, please, God, let that be true. Because we know for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And we know as we start to make tremendous advances, we get pushback. And it's always been that way, right? I'm not going to call it good and evil, but it's people favoring progress and people trying to hang on to what is, as represented in that Saturn-Uranus clash of the last 2 years. And each of them are on to new relationships, that they're ongoing challenges, but also strengthening and alliances that they're forming with other planets. So number one, this doesn't mean anything specific will necessarily happen. It's pointing to likely outcomes, influences, and all of them have a positive, potentiating, hopeful, optimistic direction they can take us. Advancement, improvement, more connectedness, less selfishness, less us, me, mine, and ours. We are a global community, and that is what Aquarius represents. Again, more on that in a bit. Number two, what I wanted to say is, even though astrology is a wonderful, wonderful tool, it's more specific than other divination arts and sciences, but it doesn't have all the answers. Okay, things are not fated, even though sometimes things feel very fated in our lives. We have free will. Do we have total free will? I don't think so. But this is the great mystery, right? This is our karma. This is other people's free will. And this is what some people think of is just simply things change, things shift. You can't always throw a harness on these things. We're all interacting. And sometimes out of left field, one player can cause a change of events that will ripple throughout the world. So we're not going to get scared, and we're not going to assume that, everything is going to be peachy. We're going to pay attention and look for the opportunities and keep looking over our shoulder for the shadow parts, which I want to talk about too. Another way to think about it is all the transits that are happening when we talk about Pluto moving into Aquarius, Saturn squaring something, changing signs. what we're talking about, that's called mundane astrology. Mundane astrology does not mean boring and ho-hum. It simply is from the Latin ruling the world. So these are the general prevailing patterns. So that's happening on a macro level, right? There can be economic growth. There can be economic wobbling across the board. There can be uprisings of populism among, geopolitics, things like that. But then there's also kind of the human collective level, which this does speak to. But then there's the way it affects us on a more personal level, the micro level. And like I was saying with the Saturn-Uranus, a lot of us were experiencing the same tension that we were seeing on a more global scale. This can reflect what we experience, can reflect or be reflected in what's happening in the zeitgeist. This is part of the Hermetic doctrine that says, as above, so below. We are not just mirrors of each other, we're the same, happening at different frequencies. Okay. And then there's even on that micro personal level, we can break it down even further. Pluto and Aquarius. Well, that can affect us on a physical level. And this will depend on a person's individual chart. And anybody who's listening, who has even a small knowledge of astrology, should take out their chart, look at it, and follow along and see where these things are actually activating natal potentials. Okay, so Pluto, any transit can affect us on a physical level. It can affect our moods, it can affect our health, it can affect our energy levels, everything. And then and this is kind of moving up in an evolutionary hierarchy, but there's no judgment here. It's what I call the plot level, what we call real life, our work, our finances, our physical homes, our communities, our families, our money, our resources, all of that. That's the plot level. But it's very, very important. It's how the soul plays out its mission, but it's not the whole story, right? And then there's the next level, which I think of as transformational. I'm not the only one who thinks of it that way. Psychological, adaptive. That's more of our mental health, our psychological well-being, our interest in improving, healing our wounds, going after the things we really desire, finding the blocks, finding the reasons for the blocks, and doing that transformational work. This is where a lot happens, and it's probably where most people listening to your program are operating for the most part. But we all go in and out, right? Nobody doesn't care about their real life. And then there's what I think of as the evolutionary level, the spiritual level. That's where the soul is. And the soul has its own purpose. The soul, everybody's come in to accomplish, to do, to experience, to release, and to learn and grow and all of that. That to me is the most important, but it can be hard to stay focused on that level, especially when we're struggling. If we're in a country where there's war, the threat of war, or we don't have enough food, or there's illness, it can make it really hard to stay focused on the spiritual level, right? They say it's very hard to have the luxury of navel gazing when you can't even feed yourself. So we want to stay very aware. If we have that opportunity, it's a blessing, it's a privilege. Not everybody's going to be able to do that in every lifetime, but it is important to think about how every single one of these transits that we're going to talk about can be operational for us personally and the collective on all these levels. And the other thing I should probably say is what we mean when we say transits. So you have your chart, and that's a snapshot of the sky the second you were born. And the more precise your time, the more accurate your chart will reflect you, and particularly the timing of events as they unfold. Transits are the relationship between the actual moving planets in the sky and your natal planets. And those connections tell the story. These are the things that can activate. It's like what makes a seed finally sprout, right? Or what stops the, the runaway train. These are what the transits do. And we love to pay attention to them because they help us. They help us navigate life with more savvy, with more an informed kind of. I always think of it as, you know, pulling back the curtain, and like taking a peek at being privy to things that not everybody sees. And you can be privy to it, but if you don't act on it in a meaningful, thoughtful, caring, unselfish way, I don't think it advances you. Meaning, we're not trying to game things. It's not just about, you know, winning in the stock market or, you know, something like that. It's really about enhancing our best potential lives. And the transits, like I said a little bit ago, can show us the potentials. And if they sound like something we're trying to do that are of interest, that the timing is right, we want more of it. We want to interact with it. We want to figure out, how could this benefit me and the people I serve? Simultaneously, we want to say, what could be the dark side of this? Because everything in the light casts a shadow. So how could there be something to pay attention to? And everything has a shadow. Even I say, Mother Teresa must have had a shadow because she was human. So there's always things, and there's different degrees of shadow. There are ardent criminals, and then there are people that are still trying to get over their fear of public speaking, let's say, or whatever it may be. We're all learning something. And so paying attention to the transits, I think, are just really, it's like having a mentor on your shoulder whispering in your ear. That makes sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. So now that you've laid the groundwork, right, for where we've been, what we have the potential of, possibilities that are there for us, and then talking a lot about, you know, the dark side, the shadow side of Pluto, and then also the opening of Aquarius, of the individual that is ready to express greater potentials. And so, so when you called it the astrology of 2024 and beyond, the Great Awakening or the end of the world as we know it. So let's talk about the Great Awakening, and let's talk about the end of the world as we know it. Really has to do with everything that you said about the systems that are not sustainable. Is that correct?
Among other things, yeah. Yeah. Systems that aren't sustainable also, and not to go right to the heavy, Cornelia, but, you know, Pluto is birth and death and regeneration. People sometimes forget that the regeneration is kind of the hallmark of Pluto. It has to, and I'm using this word metaphorically, it can be literal, but I'm using it metaphorically right now. Sometimes we have to kill things for them to be reborn, right? We know this even from like healthy forests, right? We have to set prescribed fires so that we can burn some of the fire to keep it healthy, to keep it thriving. Things can't just always be left alone, right? Because things will entropy and things will die. So there is a human interaction in it. So Pluto is associated with, on the upside, on the hopeful side, it's transformation, it's wakening up. It is the soul in astrology. It's the ruler of the underworld, Pluto, Hades, in mythology, in Greek Roman mythology. He ruled the underworld. This is where things weren't seen, right? Below the surface. So Pluto represents everything below the surface, from death to mystery novels to confusing circumstances to manipulation and power plays. It's everything. It's the whole gambit. And when we think about the ultimate level where we brought ourselves in 2024, and I don't have to talk about the bad actor states that are developing nuclear arms without wanting to participate in global alliances that keep things in check, this is the great fear. That either climate change is going to do us in, or we're going to do ourselves in with the ultimate toys, the weapons of mass destruction, which are real and looming. And that is a precipice that we do rest on right now. So Pluto can bring this awareness of, wow, it isn't just about getting and spending and winning. There really is, especially in Aquarius, right? There really is this awareness that we are a global community. And we know this. COVID really brought this into sharp relief when one country, I mean, China, who manufactures things for most of the world, they basically shut down. Supply chains were cut off. And we see how it affected us, right? It's like the butterfly flapping its wings across the world. Well, this happening across the world, what? You can't get toilet paper. I mean, it's a crazy connectedness, and we really saw it. We saw it firsthand, and we've never experienced anything like that. We are connected, so we could use that to beat our enemies, or we can use the awakening to realize, wait, there really aren't enemies. We're all humans. We're born in different countries with different ruling ideologies, right? But ultimately, and I love, and probably a lot of people have heard this quote, but I love this quote, and it always bears repeating. The great spiritual teacher Ram Dass said, we're all just walking each other home. There really is no us or them. And people on a path of awakening will say, no one is saved until everyone is saved. And Pluto in Aquarius, the sign of all together now, really makes that message clear. We have to do this together. It's not like, and I know even the people who believe in the apocalypse, they've upgraded that number from 144,000, but it used to be 144,000 will be saved. It isn't that. It's every single soul that's ever incarnated in this realm and beyond. There has to be a collective transcendence. And that's when people talk about a new humanity and a new earth and a new way of living in the world. That, to me, is the ultimate goal. It's pretty idealistic. And it's probably not something any of us are going to see in our lifetime, but it is the goal. And what is the shadow of that goal? We all wake up, or we all self-destruct. And that's the Great Awakening, or the end of the world as we know it. It's really kind of literal. But as many ecologists point out, worst case scenario is really just worst case scenario for humans and a number of species on the planet, but not necessarily the planet. I don't think we're going to have the equivalent of a big bang and Earth disappears. Earth will come back. It will, just like during COVID, remember all those amazing photos we saw, right, of the rainforest starting to come back, and pollution and waterways clearing out and things regreening themselves because we weren't manufacturing and we weren't driving, we weren't polluting to the same levels that we have been. Earth can take care of itself. It's our species, I think, that's so vulnerable, but also so ready for this collective up-leveling.
It's our responsibility. We, on an evolutionary level, are ready for it. We came here for it. We signed up for it. We're here for it. And we're ready for it. So it's our responsibility now to take the lead. And, on an evolutionary scale, is take right action. Do the things that you talked about, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that could have been one of my underlying or overarching principles is we can't keep looking to our neighbor or our state representative or whatever to do it for us. Aquarius is about responsibility. Aquarius is, we're all in this together, and we do it for ourselves and we do it for everybody else together. There's a certain ironic quality to the sign of Aquarius. On the one hand, it represents our uniqueness and our individuality, our genius, our quirkiness. And on the other hand, it represents groups and community as the opposite sign of Leo, which is about self. And now again, that could be beautiful and aspirational. Self-creation, self-love, self-empowerment. These are beautiful words. What's the shadow of that? Self-importance, putting oneself to exclude others, thinking one is more entitled or better in any way. That's the shadow. But Leo is the lesson, the great gift that Leo has to offer the rest of the signs is you got to do you. You're really not here to be that person or act like them. It is about authentic self-expression. And it's supposed to do that. But Aquarius, its opposite, its polarity sign, is there to balance, counterbalance, and complement it. And it's like, that's great. And now we are going to be about everybody, to pool everybody's greatness and genius into one. The melting pot theory, right? Except that never really worked. It was multiculturalism, multi-everythingism. And that, I think, is really the goal, to honor the individual differences and uniquenesses and cultural contributions and where we came from and how we act and create. But to bring it all together in that unified show of strength of we're really working towards shared goals. It's not competitive. It's the ultimate in cooperation.
Yeah, those are all the parts that I absolutely love and adore about this time period that we're in, about what it is that we're collectively coming to do together. But we can't do it from a place of victimhood. We can't do it from a place of blame, from a place of separation. We're doing it from a place of, like you said, genius. And if every person is expressing their uniqueness, Aquarius, expressing their gifts, shining in their gifts, we all need each other's gifts. We all need each other. So it's going to be a wonderful way that we can support and collaborate this momentum that the planets are offering us now, is what I feel. When you and I spoke last about you looking ahead to 2025 and the changes that are going to take place in 2025, which, because you also said that normally you don't look that far in advance. You normally don't do that. And so that's I think a topic I'd like to bring in here now, if you resonate with that. You looked at 2025, right?
Yeah, I want to look a little bit more at this year though, because when we look too far into the future, we miss opportunities that are either in front of us now or that are upcoming. But if we're too focused on where we're going, we're going to miss that beautiful bird on the side of the road or the something, right? So a couple of things that I want to say. Right now, the planet Saturn is moving through Pisces. He's been here for just about a year now, and it's about a 2.5-year cycle. Saturn's a planet of responsibility. When we talk about we need to take responsibility for our actions and our contributing role in things, even if we say, I never do that, I recycle, I don't vote for those kinds of leaders. Whatever we say, it doesn't matter because we're still part of a society that's in this shape. So on some level, we're a part of it. So Saturn in Pisces. So Saturn is the planet of being a grown-up, right? And taking responsibility and being mature and not looking for excuses, not looking to be a victim. Saturn pulls itself up by its bootstraps. It sets some goals. It comes up with a pathway to accomplish them. It anticipates what the problems will be. It strategizes in ways to overcome them and achieve the goals. This is Saturn's MO. It brings form. It brings structure. It brings timelines. It brings boundaries. It's great. It's a great planet if you take life seriously. It's in Pisces. That's a paradox because Pisces is the sign of the opposite of every one of those words I just said. It's formless. It's about dissolving structure. It's about superseding individual goals. It's dissolving the ego and just being. It's a pure state of consciousness in being. So that's kind of hard to wrap the mind around, right? And it's going to be different for everybody because we're all going to experience Saturn differently. We have a different relationship to authority and maturity and responsibility. A lot of this comes from our families of origin and just in our karma, everything karma. But and where it falls in our chart, what areas of life, wherever we have these sections of Pisces, it'll probably go through 2 different houses for everybody, not necessarily. But this is where I think, and Pisces is also the realm of the unconscious, and it's the dream state, and it's the collective unconscious, and it's intuition, and it's otherworldliness and other dimensions. And I think Saturn's 2.5 year cycle through Pisces, it'll first enter Aries, completing a full Saturn cycle in next year in 2025. But until it does that and stays in Pisces, I think that's saying to us, we got to clean up our own act. We've got to look at where we're playing small or hiding or denying or resisting or ignoring. And, clean our own house, sweep our own porch, whatever metaphor we like to think of, we need to take responsibility for our own actions, our own limitations, our own beliefs. This is different from judging it. This isn't about being mean or harsh or, shaming ourselves. Never that. It can happen, but we want to make sure that we're doing it with the intention of improvement, enhancement, advancement for self, family, community, and the collective. And so this is the closing of a period whenever things complete cycles. And there's all kinds of cycles, and there's loads of cycles, and they all are on top of each other, happening concurrently. Some planets are in multiple cycles. And so when they start to come together like what we're seeing now, and with Pluto entering Aquarius, it's not the last sign, but it's a major sea change, right? From the old guard Capricorn to new world potentials Aquarius. That's probably the most radical sign change you can make. And then after that is Pisces to Aries, because that ends the zodiacal cycle, whether it's actual or just kind of symbolic. Saturn will take 29 years to go around. So this really is a completion energy that we're getting ready to enter into. And then also next year, and this is again looking ahead, the planet Neptune, which rules Pisces, it's the modern ruler of Pisces, is doing something similar to Saturn. He's slower moving, so it's on a different timeline, but it's like Neptune entered first into Pisces while Saturn was still back in, 3 signs ago, and then he's caught up. And now the two will finish up in Pisces really close together in time when they don't have any real relationship between their cycles. Neptune is in a sign for 14 years. Saturn's there for 2.5 years. So this, and then to do it at the very, very end of the zodiac cycle. This is really interesting and symbolic, I think. Saturn, as I was saying, is form and structure and order and discipline in the physical, concrete, material world. Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, is the opposite of all that, right? It is kind of, figuratively speaking, it's the final phase before we evolve back into all that is. back into spirit form, and then begin the whole cycle anew. So Saturn will move in, let's see, Neptune actually will move into Aries first next year, 2025, on March 20th. And remember, it's been in Pisces. It'll be almost 14 years at that point. And then just 2 months after, which is fluky. I mean, it's not, but it seems really fluky. Saturn will also finish up its run in Pisces and move into Aries on May 24th. I mean, this is stunning. This is absolutely stunning. This is a hard reset. And when you say things like hard reset, there are people that go, oh, that's so exciting. We have all these new opportunities. We can wipe the slate clean. We can reinvent. We can create new alliances and new treaties and come up with new distribution methods for food and medicine. And other people say, oh, someone's going to hit the button, right? Because it's all filtered through our consciousness. And what was really important goes to what you were saying, Cornelia, on an even higher level, I think, not just responsibility for taking right action, cleaning house, sweeping the porch, things like that, but also for catching our thought processes. Because whatever we think about, whatever we talk about, the more we do it, we are reinforcing neural pathways. And these are what are bringing the inner world outer. As above, so below, as within, so without. And this is part of the process by which it happens. This isn't woo-woo. This isn't make-believe. This is neuroscience, that we are creating our own reality. And when you have hundreds of millions of people, when you have billions of people thinking positively, working positively, taking action, making sacrifices, working collaboratively, we've never seen anything like it. It really could be paradise. But on the other hand, the shadow side, everybody's living in fear. Everybody's saying, well, if the end of the world or just horrible times are imminent, then I'm going to do things. And they're going to be restrictive, reactive, contracting things instead of expanding and moving forward. And they're going to maybe hoard and not look out for other people and become more competitive and desperate. And so it's very vital that part of the responsibility is for what goes on between our ears and how we speak to other people. Are we speaking with kindness? Are we speaking with hopefulness? Are we speaking from a place of doom? Because we know how this can spread, right? This spreads like wildfire, which I probably shouldn't say to someone in California, but it does. These things just take off and they can't be abated. So we want to be very conscious of how we even start to perceive when we hear about these things. We want to be thinking, what's the potential? And then how can I uniquely be part of the movements for the betterment of the planet and my personal life? Because when the planet does better, we do better. And when we do better, the planet does better. It really is that, that mirroring thing that's happening.
Yeah.
So that's part of the responsibility. And we're going to see, remember I said that like 2 years ago, Saturn and Uranus were dueling a lot, representing, and I'm oversimplifying, but it's not untrue, the desperate clinging to old ways versus the need for change and improvement. That's what that battle represented. Well, what we're going to see now when Jupiter, and that this is this year, Jupiter will leave. Jupiter changes signs every year, so it's not quite as dramatic, but it's what it does when it's in these signs that I think is very important. And Jupiter has been in Taurus along with Uranus, and those two are going to meet up in April. And that's a pretty exciting event. That's going to be on April 20th, 21st. It kind of depends where you live. But if you, I live on the East Coast of the United States, so I think in Eastern Standard Time. So it's going to be just after midnight on the 21st. But if you live in California, if you live further west, it'll be on the 20th. Jupiter and Uranus come together in Taurus. Now, this is pretty exciting because this is also a culmination of their two energies. I went to look up the last time. Now, they're going to meet every year, 13 months in a different sign because Jupiter will keep changing signs. I went to look up the last time that they were conjunct in Taurus, as they'll be on April 21st. Never. I personally, I Googled it and it said they've never done it. But of course, I didn't believe that. So I went back through my own reference books. I got as far back as 1400, and they were never in the same, they were never in Taurus at the same time. We've
So
never
that's
seen
this
this.
year? In April, you said?
It's very, very significant because Taurus is, I think it's the earthiest of the earth signs. It's the first earth sign. It really represents the corporal world. It's our bodies, it's our physicality, it's our planet. And I think, you know, we can talk about all kinds of obvious and subtle things, how we can make positive improvements, how we can feed people, how we can get advances in medicine, how we can prevent the spread of fake news. But if we don't have a planet to host these conversations, they're kind of moot. So I think the issue of keeping this planet alive is got to be as vital as keeping ourselves alive. And when Jupiter and Uranus meet up at 21 degrees and 50 minutes, almost 22 degrees of Taurus, and on April 21st, I think they're bringing an absolutely thrilling possibility here. Jupiter is all the good words. Jupiter is just everything we love. That's why they call it the Great Benefic. It's growth and expansion and knowledge and wisdom and truth and justice and all those wonderful kind of, oh yeah, I remember those concepts, things that make life worth living. There are ideals. Jupiter is kingly. Jupiter is the judge. Jupiter is truth. And honesty, it's objective truth, but it's us being in our honesty. It's positivity, it's optimism, it's taking risk for a greater good. And it's good luck. Uranus is sudden radical change. You don't like the status quo? Call in Uranus. He's going to flip it for you. And when these two come together, I really think the opportunity to really hit the gas on our optimism, on our faith, on our highest ideals. It transcends religious dogma and it gets into what is true religion, it's true connection to what's beyond us. And I really think this could be a turning point for us. And then shortly thereafter that, Jupiter will move on to Gemini. And it's not going to retrograde, it'll retrograde within Gemini, but it won't change signs. So Jupiter, admittedly, is not comfortable in Gemini. Why? It's opposite to Jupiter's natural sign of Sagittarius. Jupiter's also the ancient ruler of Pisces, and that squares Gemini, and Sagittarius opposes it. Jupiter wants to go big. It wants to expand. It doesn't really like limits. It doesn't like curfews. It doesn't really even like laws. It lives in its integrity. It doesn't need somebody else to tell it what is the right rules to follow. Jupiter just wants to span and grow. But Gemini wants to just break things down and understand them and analyze them and talk about it. But Jupiter just wants to experience it. So we call that, when you're in your home sign, when a planet's in its home sign, that's domicile. He's at home. And the opposite to that is called detriment. And so he's functioning a little bit at a deficit. He's not in his natural element. It would be like if you speak a second language not well. It would be like you had to conduct everything in a different language. Or maybe you needed to do something physically in a pair of really tight high heels. You're constricted, and that's not Jupiter's style. But he's going to bring a lot of intellectualism, a lot of curiosity, and Jupiter will take the place of Uranus in squaring the Saturn. over the course of its tenure in Gemini, which will, so it's going to happen 3 times. And to me, the significance, what's being highlighted, just like Saturn and Uranus showed us the flaws in the structures, Jupiter wants to expand and Saturn always wants to hold the line. It can contract or at the very least conserve. At the very least, Saturn wants to conserve. Jupiter always wants more. And so there's going to be a question, an adjustment period on the macro level, but also in our personal lives of how much is too much? What do we really need? What do we want? Why do we want more? Do we need that? Are we taking from someone who could benefit from it? It's just all these questions of right sizing on every level. And of course, where it falls, what it activates in our natal charts will be very telling. And it's tricky because everybody has a different chart. So we don't know how it's affecting their charts. But when you learn astrology or work with an astrologer, you can see, oh, that's what's happening kind of globally or in my nation. And this is what's happening for me personally. And remember, that's my job, my relationships, but also my soul growth. And with our free will, we get to choose how we want to work with it. But I think Jupiter and Saturn are planets of very high integrity. And I hope, it's really my hope, that it'll be really hard for people to get away with blatant lies and blatant abuses. Those dates, there's 3 of them. Only 2 of them are in these signs because, as we said, Saturn's going to move on. August 29th of this year, of 29, the 2 will have their opening square. And then on Christmas Eve, it might be Christmas Day in Europe and Asia for sure. It's going to be its retrograde square when Jupiter retrogrades and hits it again. And then the 3rd time that they meet by a challenging square is going to be in June of 25. And they'll both have changed signs. Saturn will now be in Aries, whole new cycle. Jupiter will be in Cancer, which, technically speaking, is a sign where he's very much at home. We say he's exalted. He is able to express his highest qualities in the nurturing sign of Cancer. So I think these are things to really look forward to. And then, of course, we want to see, well, how's this affecting me personally, right? And with Saturn and Neptune both having moved into Aries, Aries is the first sign. It's the courageous sign. It's the trailblazer. I know we all experience seasons differently, but for much of the world, certainly in the Northern Hemisphere, Aries, which corresponds with the beginning of spring, it's the spring equinox. It's where all those plants that have been dormant and underground have to muster the energy that has been dormant and spring back to life and fight through frozen soil and inhospitable circumstances to spring to life again. Aries is very, very brave and very, very strong and very, very determined. And this is fresh start energy. And we will all have this available to us, not just because it's Aries season when the sun moves into Aries, but because these other major planets, none of us will have experienced Neptune in Aries in our lifetime. 29 years ago, Saturn was there. Many of us will remember that. But this is a whole new ballgame. And another thing that I think supports this, we could really be at the threshold of a new world order, a new humanity.
Well, these are all just so many wonderful things to look forward to engage with, to practice, to really look at how you want to contribute, how you want to express, how you want to engage in your own personal life, which, of course, if you do everything in your own personal life, that is healing the planet, that is healing the world. So that is one thing that you can do. I know that you help people with, looking at their charts, giving them readings in just a few minutes, because we'll be closing the show in just a few minutes. So, would you mind sharing how people can find you on social media, where they can look you up so they can see if they can book a session with you?
Oh, absolutely. Um, One of the easiest ways to do it, especially for people that don't know if a reading would be right or what they would get out of it, you can book a free call with me and we could just jump on a call. It's not going to be a reading, it's just going to be a conversation. But I know I don't like to go to somebody and trust them with my most personal things if I don't know who they are. So I always appreciate it when a practitioner will give me a little bit of her time or his time. It's Ask Suzanne. My name is Suzanne Gerber, and you go to asksuzanne.com, and that'll take you right to my calendar. And no cost, no obligation, nothing like that. If you want to learn more about me, then I invite you to visit my website. And my business is called Stars and Stones, the word starsandstoneshealing.com. The stones comes from it. Not it's crystals, yes, but it's also the healing stones that I work with in my shamanic practice. Over a few years, we in the tradition I studied with, we acquire certain stones that become very meaningful, and we work through the directions of the medicine wheel, and we clean our own house. We look very deeply at our own stuff. You don't just jump in and try to support or coach or educate or inspire people if you don't know your own workings. I would always kind of joke, Cornelia, that our program, because I love to calculate things, my moon in Virgo always wants to calculate. I figured we spent about 360 hours in classes, in training, doing rites and rituals and initiations and homework and case studies. And I say about 50 hours of it was really learning technique and really practicing the work and getting the initiation. Only about 50 hours. The other 300 was figuring out what's my stuff, where my ego ends and where someone else begins, and really clearly being able to delineate the difference. Because I think even really great helpers and healers and therapists, still, if they haven't worked with their shadow, it's going to get projected onto other people. And to me, that's the biggest thing we want to avoid. We really want to be able to show up in neutrality and support for whoever shows up, even if we don't necessarily like the person. We really want to be there to 100% support them.
Yeah. And I think I want to close it here. I want to end it here. That last statement, very, very powerful. If you haven't worked with the shadow, you're going to project the shadow onto another person so you can see it. That's really what's happening is, and that right away removes the judgment. It removes everything, because if you project it out, you're projecting it so you can see it. So the person that you're projecting it on hopefully is holding that mirror of compassion for you. And that is a wonderful way to close the show today. So thank you, Suzanne Gerber, for coming on and for sharing all of this wonderful uh, planetary possibilities that we have before us here in 2024 and beyond. I look forward to having you on again, where we will have further conversations in the future about all things astrology and our planet Earth. So thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you so much. And the one last thing I would add, because I'm not a really great self-promoter, but if you go to my website, the starsandstoneshealing.com, you can sign up for my newsletter. I don't write constantly. I'm not selling a lot, but I share a lot of insights. I make offers, and every year I run a free online summit, top astrologers, and it's a way to find out about it and to get invited and to be part of the many thousands of people around the world who are tuning in and be part of that community. So it's free, there's no obligation, and I never spam people.
Well, absolutely, everybody, go sign up. This is a wonderful tool. Astrology, I use astrology in my own life. Wonderful tool to get to know yourself, and also, look at when it's a good time to take action, when it's a good time to pause, when it's a good time to understand, oh, there's a square happening. This is what's going on. Squares are here to help us, release and let go. So not to have those internal struggles. I want to thank you again, Suzanne, for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for listening and tuning in. We'll see you again next time on the Cornelia Stephanie Show. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.